Okay, so back to where we were last video. We covered variables and types, okay? So now let's move into if statements. What are if statements? They're basically, this is how they're laid out. If there's first if, then there's brackets, and then there's curly brackets. The inside of the brackets there's a condition, which needs to be true. Um, the like it can the condition to be true can be many like many things. For example, it could be let's just first make the variable. It could be true. So let's put console.log and then uh, this statement is true. Uh-huh. So we can make it so that it's like true, and if we run it, then it's gonna say this statement is true. Because true is true. um, Now the 0 is it true? It isn't. You see, so you need to be careful with 0, because 0 you might get mixed up, and yeah, that's why if yes, it like might be useful if you're using it for like 0 and 1, like if it's 0 and then it's false and then it's 1, then it's true because 1 is true, like it's classified as true, like any number except for 0 is true. Now booleans, false is false obviously, and then undefined is false too. You can also make undefined like that, without putting any value inside of it. Now null is also false. And strings, empty strings, are false too. Now strings with values, like with a space or anything, really is true. So um those are like the basic ones, but like anything else, like big ints or I don't know, some other stuff, mm, the big ints are true, but others might not. Well, they probably all are. But yeah, this is like the like if condition is true, then uh, run this code. You could also, instead of putting brackets here, the curly brackets, if it's one line, then you can just remove these. Like that. This separator, like this colon, helps the code know that it's like another line. Because if we were to put stuff here, test, for example, and then it would only run this thing, and then it would run this. But like then if we made the condition false, for example, it would just run test, and then if we got rid of this, then it just run test again, because I forgot. Yeah, you need to be careful with these stuff, because sometimes I've seen cases where like I don't know, but I've just seen cases like where it might run like two, and if there's more than two lines, then you'd rather go for the curly brackets. But if it's only one line, you can for sure just not use curly brackets, because that's just more lines. I mean, more text that you have to type. Now, if else, like there's an if statement. So let's say if condition is true, then we can do else. Like if it isn't true, um, like we can say this statement is false, for example. So it just, if this is false, then it just go for this. So this statement is false. Now if we do true, then it show this statement is true. Okay. Now there's one more that goes in between these. It's called an else if statement. So it's basically, if this isn't true, but this is true, run this. And if that's not true, then run that. You can also, like, you don't need to necessarily have this, like the else statement with the else if. You will always need the if statement. You could also not always need the else if statement. So if we say if else if condition is false, then that'd just be another way. But I mean, like, else if condition, let's say if instead of condition, now let's use string. We can use string. If string um, equals equals is a way to compare values. So it's like if this is equal to that, like, so if this is equal to string, then do that. But in this case it'd be like if this is equal to another, like, value, then we can do console.log this statement, this is equal to value. Now this statement is equal to string. Now this could be changed, like this would apply to other, like it doesn't necessarily have to be this. It could also be like if a certain condition is met, like I mentioned before, or if a certain boolean is true, or if something like that. So here it's just like this is the, like, you can also have more else ifs. You don't necessarily just have to have one. You can have like many, but if you get really large amounts, you'd rather use switch case, which I'll cover in another video. Like if you get like 20 lines of code, then you'd rather use switch case. So if we say if it's equal to text, this is since it's in quotations, it's a string text, not text itself. Here it says it's equal to string because here it's called string. Now if we put value, it says error because condition is not defined. Oh yeah, because I didn't put the right. Yeah, I didn't define it. This value is this string. This is equal to value. Now if we do text, and now if we do this condition is not any other, and then we do like random, for example, this statement is not any other. So it's not any of these. So it checks for this. If this isn't true, then it goes into this one, and if that isn't true, it goes to this one, and if none of those are true, it goes into this one. Now, as I said, you can forget about these if you don't need them. If you just need the if else, you can also like forget about the else statement or another if, like else if. Like you don't necessarily need all of these, or you don't need any of these actually. Sometimes, like sometimes it's just checking for this. But those are the like if state, like the most common if else statements. Now there is another thing that would be useful if you really don't want to write 2 lines of code. You can simply just use something called a ternary operator. This is more like let me show you. It's like string equals string, and then you do question mark, then do this. I'll explain it once I finish. And then else do that. Okay, this. Yeah, it's like if this statement is true, then run this. Else, do this, basically. So I repeat, if this condition is true, then run this code or do this code. Yeah, like this is equal to string, and then this is an else. basically, and this runs this code. Um, this can be used if like you don't you need to check an if else really quickly and you don't want to like write outline 2 lines of code. If you just want 1 line of code, I mean it's a bit long, you can separate it, like you can do this for example. So that would be one example, which would make more lines, but instead of writing to write if blah, 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 you just need to write an exclamation, and then instead of else you just need to write a colon. Let's test that out. The ternary operator, here it works. So if we get rid of the if else statement, yeah. Comments are really useful if you want to like remember parts of your code. So, like if you want to remember parts, you just like if you forget, if you haven't touched that code for a while, you just do comments. They're really useful, as I said. You do it with 2 slashes, or if you want to have a block comment, like multiple line comment, you can do slash and then apostrophe and then at the end apostrophe and then slash. This is a long comment. This is like 1 line comment. Sometimes you use this in between, like in between this, like you can literally just do it like, yeah, so it doesn't affect the code, but here you can write like text, and you really can't do that if you were to write it with a slash, because then it interfere with the whole line. After that you wouldn't really be able to write anything else. But yeah, like those are comments, and they're very useful if you want to like not use the code right now, but you might be using it later, or if you want to modify parts of the code. This is like you might reduce again, but you don't know. Yeah, comments can be very useful, as I said. And that's been if statements. Make sure to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching for this long.